Welcome to this week's Silver Arrows show. Coming up, we explain just how close Nico Rosberg was to retiring from the Australian Grand Prix. How did the radio communications ban affect the team on Sunday? And I've got 5 insider facts for you from the race weekend. So we're 1 race down in this mammoth F1 season, only 20 more races to go. And at the Australian Grand Prix, the team scored its first 1-2 of the season, but its 5th back-to-back 1-2 with Nico Rosberg winning the race. So here are your 5 insider facts from the Australian Grand Prix. Did you know we swapped Lewis's front wing while the red flag was out after he sustained minor damage? How many autographs do you think Nico and Lewis signed over the race weekend? We estimate it to be over 1,000. The team ranks 2nd for their average pit stop time over the weekend, just behind the Williams Martini racing team. As well as being the Australian Grand Prix race winner, Nico Rosberg is also a master juggler. Here he is at a fan forum just before qualifying at the weekend. You may have noticed a dramatic reduction in the amount of broadcasted radio transmission between the teams and drivers on Sunday. Well, this graph shows just how fewer radio transmissions there were during this year's race compared to the 2015 Australian Grand Prix. So as you can see from my insider facts, it was an action-packed race. But one of the stories that went untold until the end of the race was Nico Rosberg's rising brake caliper temperature after he collected debris. Now, because of the new radio restrictions, the team couldn't tell Nico what had happened, so he was left to manage the situation on his own, whilst having to judge his pace sufficiently to stay in contention for the win. Let's have a look at this animation now to see exactly what happened. As you can see from the diagram, air normally flows through the brake duct to cool the brake caliper and discs. On lap 30 of Sunday's race, Nico picked up a piece of debris that became stuck in his front right brake duct, which then obstructed the airflow and prevented efficient cooling. This led to the brake caliper temperature rising to a potentially critical level. Nico was able to manage this problem though from the cockpit in 2 ways. First, he adapted his driving style to do more lift and coast, using air resistance rather than the brake system to slow the car at the end of the straights without losing too much lap time. He also adjusted the brake balance rearwards to reduce the duty on the front brakes. Despite the problem reaching almost critical levels, the temperature then stabilised. Despite the problem, the team decided to keep Nico out on track and he was able to take the checkered flag and that all-important first win of the season. The Australian Grand Prix was the first time we saw the new rules and regulations for 2016 play out. So Chief Engineer Andrew Shovlin was heavily involved with deciding what the teams could and couldn't say over the weekend to Nico and Lewis. Now, Andrew, a bit of a full-on weekend for you with all these new rules and regulations. So how did that affect you in terms of preparation for the first race of the season in Australia last weekend?
It's been difficult because you don't know exactly what the regulations are going to be. As you saw over the weekend, there were clarifications and another clarification. So it was hard to know exactly the game you were going to be playing. But a big part of the preparation was done months ago. So looking at, making the car better able to look after itself and give the driver the information he needs. We also did a lot of work in the simulator. So throwing scenarios at the drivers, because before it was always a big safety blanket where we were there and able to jump in and instruct them and, tell them what to do next. Here we had to be confident that whatever the scenario, they can deal with it on their own.
So I understand that you'd worked on a crib sheet before the race with Nico and Lewis, and how did that work in practice during the race?
Well, it's just about knowing what you can say quickly. I mean, we get given a regulation that's 3 or 4 pages long, and when you're in the middle of the race, you haven't really got the time to sort of start flicking through it. So it's looking at different scenarios and what language can you apply to that, and making sure it's all legal. And it's tricky for the engineers as well, because they've got people speaking in their ears all the time about what they need to do, what the driver needs to do. And they've got to make sure they don't then go and put something over the airways that would be considered a breach of this regulation.
So lots of filtering.
Yeah, lots of filtering, and we'll get better at it over time. But it's always difficult on the first race because you're having to unlearn what you've been doing for however many years.
Well, thank you very much for talking us through that. I now would like to play a little game with you.
Ooh, good.
So we have looked at the radio communications from 2015.
Yeah.
And we're going to ask you whether the comms that we used last year would have been available this year. So let's listen to our first clip.
Tyres now feeling a little bit better again.
Yeah, I mean, he can tell us whatever he wants. So, you know, they can talk the whole race long. We can listen to the information. If they ask questions, most of them we can't reply to, but there's nothing restricting the driver talking.
So lots of chatting for the drivers, but just
Absolutely,
not a two-way
yeah.
conversation.
Well, we were telling them, you know, give us as much information as you can, because before we could prompt, we could say, how are the tyres? So now they're just programmed to feed it all our way.
And our last one, let's listen to this.
Just ignore the dash. No need to look at that, there is an error.
Can't say anything. So we'd need to leave them to work it out. And I mean, there was the instance where Lewis asked about his dashboard. We only could say that we can't say anything.
Well, thank you so much for helping us decode all the messages. And I think practice will make perfect, so on to Bahrain. Every time the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula 1 team wins a race, a team representative goes up onto the podium with Nico or Lewis to collect the Constructors' Trophy. Now this weekend out in Australia, it was Russell Cooley's turn. He's a chief engineer in the design office. So Russell, congratulations first of all for the weekend.
Thank you.
Now it was your turn to go up on the podium. Can you explain what your role is within the team?
My main task is putting together the car, making sure it's safe, making sure it's reliable, making sure it's on time, working with the chief designer and the technical management to make sure we deliver a product that works.
What was it like to be up on the podium, to look out and see all the fans there at Albert Park?
The first thing, it was a great honour. It's a kind of experience that most people don't have, and I didn't expect I would. So it was very exciting. I was obviously a bit nervous. It's not something that happens every day, but it's great to look out across the field of people. We've got your own team there supporting you and the drivers. And obviously it's an experience I won't ever forget.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your podium story with us.
No problem.
That's it for this week's Silver Arrows show. The countdown is already on for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Keep an eye on the channel. We'll have lots of behind the scenes videos coming soon, so make sure you subscribe.